Yes. You're a member of staff, yeah. We were here in the previous session. Every time somebody opens the door, it created such noise and disruptive. I think they should oil the hinges and the yes. If you whoever it is, I know, but you're more likely to talk to the people.
Also, the problem that we have is some people come in late or have to go to the toilet.
But precisely, you can't have a room like this with that kind of creepy door. And then but that's me. So we're talking about one and two, yeah?
Yeah,
Not two and three.
yeah,
But
probably.
impact indicators are very interesting ones, but we may not have time for that.
Impact indicator.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if we could have a, that's the four on
yeah,
my
that's number
list.
4. Okay,
Yeah.
I will ask, definitely ask that as
Yeah.
well. So I will start with
We
the.
may run out about impact indicators, and we
Okay.
may open a forum, online forum after this, especially say for the idealist community,
Okay.
to actually flesh it out because it's non-trivial. Impact indicators are not the same as KPIs.
Exactly. It's very important to discuss.
Okay.
All right.
KPIs are a shortcut. If you're glossing over something that's really important, just so that you end up with a number. Sorry, but I'm not going to say that.
Oh my God. It would be very nice if you would say it.
Would it?
Yes, definitely.
We're having eggs in the audience to promote me.
I will cover you. Hello. Hello. Hi. Dear guests and dear panelists, I just want to shortly introduce myself. I am Katrín and come from the research funding agency in Iceland called Rannís, and I am here to moderate this session. You are now visiting a workshop that will focus on impact pathways in Horizon applications. And just shortly to summarize, Horizon Europe has challenged European academic and industrial communities to change their mindset, namely to put innovation and impact in focus by building impact pathways. So in this workshop, we will discuss the importance of your dissemination, exploitation, and communication of your project, and also how your project will address the expected outcome in the topic and contribute also to wider impacts outlined in the destination of the call. So this might sound very complicated and boring text, but fortunately I have here two experts with me here who are very much experienced evaluators of Horizon Europe program. And I will allow them to introduce themselves, but it is Duška Rosenberg and Dimitris Vassiladis. Thank you. And I want to invite you, Rosa, to start introduce yourself, and then go over to Dimitri before we start.
Okay. Oh, it works when you put it close to your mouth, as they said. I'm Duška Rosenberg, and I am a retired professor of University of London, and my field is informatics, but more precisely, people and technology. One of my PhD students have said I was an intellectual mongrel, that is like a dog with different breeds, because I started my education with English language and literature and cultural anthropology, which is ethnology, and then converted to more mathematically based disciplines like discrete math, symbolic logic, and so on, and ended up a theoretical linguist. But my PhD has led me to more implementational aspects of technology. So as you can see, there is a kind of pathway in my career that makes me go backwards and forwards. But basically, I'll be approaching the issue of impact from a human-centric point of view, largely. But I do understand technology. I think my PhD counts as a computer science PhD, so in AI and natural language processing. So it's all kind of a mixture. Synergy is the word.
Thank you.
I think, oh, that works. Well done with my surname. Kudos. Very impressive. I'm Dimitris. Don't bother with the surname. I'm the CEO of Wellix, and overall, if I could describe myself at the moment, I'm an early investor and entrepreneur. So I started while doing my PhD almost 22 years to the day ago. I started getting introduced into, back then it used to be the late days of FP5 and FP6. And then I got really heavily involved in proposals from FP7 onwards. Initially as an applicant, partner, then coordinator, then managing a large team, you know, doing all these things. Then moved into Horizon 2020 also as an evaluator of different instruments of the European Commission, including, back then it used to be the FTI and the SME instrument, phase 1, phase 2, for those that still remember. And I'm very thankful for this journey that I had within the help and the support of the European Commission, because it taught me a lot of valuable lessons that have shaped me and have helped me a lot with what I'm doing today. So the reason I got invited, and I'm very thankful for the invitation for today, is to talk about impact. And this is what I do on a daily basis. So I'm looking at all the businesses I'm involved in from the impact point of view, why we're doing what we're doing, and also supporting the European Commission in the evaluation stages. I'm always the bad guy questioning everything. So why do we need to do everything before we say we're going to do it? So thank you very much. Thank you for being here. I hope it's going to be a viable session for everyone.
Thank you so much. As I am the moderator of the session, I have prepared some questions, and you will do all the hard work. And hopefully we will get some questions from you as well. That will be very welcomed. So I will just fire away and start diving into. The first question is, impact pathways are mentioned as a novelty in Horizon Europe. Could you elaborate a little bit on that sentence? What is looked for when evaluating impact pathways? Do you want to start, Rosa?
Okay, I'll start. We have been over the past couple of days talking about impacts from a different perspective than the one that I would evaluate for this particular program, because I'm not sure how prepared the proposers are for the new considerations that we've been debating here, however important they are. So I would, as an evaluator, I would tread carefully on that. Possibly argue that I would give extra points if people have mentioned how our focus on synergy would influence the three major impact areas, established major impact areas, and that is the economic, societal, and the last one is business, commercial, implementational, organizational, sort of, I think we had those labels. So I would try to be fair to the proposers by not punishing them if they're not up to speed with the most latest debates about it. But I would still respect if they mentioned it in their proposals. There is enough information on the internet, but I think we expect them to follow the call rather than gather information from somewhere else.
I think you make a fair point there. because we need to allow some time for people to
Yeah.
adjust and accommodate the new reality. I think novelty is an interesting term that you used for the 9 impact dimensions. And I say that simply because if we really think about it, these 9 pillars, these 9 directives, or whatever we want to call them, have always been there in some way or the other. And I believe what the new guideline is trying to do is actually bring some order with our, let's say, mind or brain chaos that we used to have in the past. The interesting thing here is that still, in spite of this novel approach to the definition and the assessment of impact within projects and activities, we still use terms like dissemination, exploitation, which feel, at least in my eyes, a bit outdated based on what we are now requested to do, both from the evaluation point of view, but also from the applicant point of view. I still apply for innovation funding when I see something that makes sense. So this is something that we need to take into consideration. We need to make sure that we are able to dig deep in whatever is presented in the different proposals, so that we do not, let's say, necessarily penalize somebody, a consortium, a team, an applicant, simply because they haven't really aligned with the 9 dimensions, because the information might well still be there, okay? So this is important. I think it's a good guideline, but still needs some iteration in order for this to become practice and to be instilled as a culture also from the applicant point of view.
Can I just
Yeah.
add to this? Once a project has been successful and it's funded, we do have project reviews every 6 months, so depending on the program. And these new issues could then be, by the advisors, reviewers, could be then mentioned and sort of introduced on a systematic basis in the context of each individual proposal, rather than a sort of general policy statements. We could use the successful projects to promote, to clarify, to refine what we are talking about generally. So we do have a mechanism for introducing this during the project, during this call, but not to punish people if they are not fully aware of them at the beginning, at the sort of stage when they submit the proposal.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And I wanted to get some reflection from you in the audience. How many of you are actually writing an application or in the mindset of writing an application? How many? Okay. Is there someone in the audience that want to reflect on this? Have any question, comments? I run to you.
Thank you. So yeah, if I may reflect on this, so I'm a SME. So we usually work more on the impact, but more on the how the private sector can bring some realism, some good knowledge on the market, on the viability of some of the product or solutions. But dissemination, communication, exploitation is really something that is very far from it seems it's always a separate work package. In every project, it's a separate work package. It's like an additional layer that would take all the results and would disseminate, and it's not to judge, but just to say sometimes it seems to be a bit separated, not really interlinked with the work packages, although the ideas are very bright. Conference, organization, technical days organization, it's really mandatory, but this is always done in a separate manner. It's what I can say from my small experience.
Thank you. Do you? Yes?
Thank you. I think what our colleague just said it is the view from the business side. Of course, from the academic side, that's one of the major work packages because you can produce your papers there, you can go to conferences, etc. And from the funding side, this is somehow the justification. Why do we give away taxpayers' money? You can see all these results that are published online or whatever, open science. And the art, I believe, as a national contact point, is combining these worlds, these viewpoints, towards a common goal, so that you, in the end, don't see it as separate and somehow artificially put on, but as something that you are not deeply involved in, but you still appreciate, because you can also take research from other projects for your own business in the end. If there's open science, you can take up those results, you can get a new knowledge, generate new ideas, new projects. So that's the ideal way, if it always works that way. It's a different question.
You also had a point?
Thank you. I had a comment and a question, really. So the comment goes more into the way I understood impact pathways so far is really this scheme that's also in the Horizon Europe templates, where you really have to work through, okay, what does the Commission want to achieve with this specific topic within that destination? And how are you going to show them what you do? And that mainly refers to the communication, dissemination, and exploitation work package that then will help you communicate or get those results to someone who can really do something with the output that you've created, and then achieve that outcome that they want to see. Now, the 9 pillars that you mentioned, Dimitri, for me, that scientific, economic, and societal impact, I understood this to be a framework to assess the impact of the framework program as a whole. So at the moment, for me, these two concepts have been a little bit mixed up. So that would be my comment. But then the question would be, Dimitri, to you, is like, if you say that in your mind and in the proposals that you've seen, kind of like these 9 pillars have already been addressed in the proposal somehow, is there a way to also... I'm mainly speaking from someone who's usually or has been responsible for communication, dissemination, and exploitation work packages. And you've got these academic partners who do their work superbly in all of the work packages. But at the moment, they need to do more than just go to conferences or to write a paper. They're completely overwhelmed. You really have to be a guide there and explain what's happening. So can you use that 9-pillar structure also to really help them understand what is needed from there and possibly also make that bridge to kind of like SMEs that can exploit that output and really do something, SMEs particularly, that think of all of that together instead of separate?
That's a very interesting point, and it's the constant, let's say, constant points of friction that you get also within teams when you write up a proposal or when you execute a project. When I first started working with European Commission projects, I still remember that we were submitting like 150 to 200 pages of a proposal, and that would include roughly 1 page for exploitation. Today, and I think sometimes when I went over the 1 page of exploitation, my partners would say, my God, you have written too much. Maybe we should shorten something and give more technical diagrams. Okay, now we have come to 2024, and we have dedicated workshops talking about impact. We focus on impact first, okay? So we start with that. It all boils down to one single word, which is alignment. If you don't have that at a team level, you will have, let's say, a consortium of 10. You will have 10 different voices, 10 different directions pushing to different pathways, if we can use that term, during the proposal or even during the project. So you need alignment. And a trick I found useful recently in the last few years since Horizon Europe is to use the table we are provided at 2.3. So I use that whenever a member of my team comes with an idea to enhance the product and we want to make it into a research activity. We bring that 2.3 first, and we try to fill that in before we write anything else. Simply because it is a very clever way to have in one place the idea, what we're going to build and where we're going to build it. So that automatically answers, or partly answers, or sometimes it never answers, the 9 pillars of impact, because effectively we have to be able to go from the very focused level, which is proposal level, or work package level, or activity level, and to go to the higher, more abstract level, which is why is the Commission funding Horizon Europe in the first place? So when you are able to think low and high in abstraction, then you need to make sure that these two align at all times. So if a key strategic objective of the Commission is to, it used to be like 20 years ago, we used to work a lot on Galileo because it was a key strategic objective of the Commission to become independent from the US and GPS, okay? So all the projects we're doing under that had to serve somehow that bigger concept, that bigger objective. So these things need to be there at all time. They need to be part of the checklist. It's not just the project that we do in isolation, but there is a whole other ecosystem that this project contributes to at the end of the day.
Fabian Kohler, I'm from the German Ministry of Research and Education. So, and I was former head of the German delegation in the Cluster 4 Program Committee, so I know a little bit about the texts you're talking about. So we are on the verge of FP10 now. So when I boil down what you just said, let's take Cluster 4, for example. I think that's true for all the other schemes as well, but we have a text that's like 500-ish pages long. And so when you take one call out of this big paper, you lose a lot of consistency. And for somebody who writes an application, it's hard to pinpoint what the original thought was that led to this specific call. So this, what you just said, this high level of abstraction, and from what does the Commission or the Member States or whoever want to fund this scheme? So my question would be, do we need like 500-ish pages, or do we need like more 100 pages and more guidelines in the call itself? Because, I mean, I love the NCP networks, but it cannot be that somebody who wants to write an application has to have some kind of scholarship within an NCP to be able to write a simple application for a funding scheme. So is it too complex now to find your way through this labyrinth, or how do we deal with this kind of complexity? I mean, we need some kind of complexity, but I think we've gone too far. That would be my assessment at the moment.
It depends on too far in which direction. I can't answer that directly without touching upon the dissemination communication by academics. I think we have been traditionally working on our own patch. And once we finished our research and we got our research results, we have to write scientific papers, we have to organize conferences, we have to develop PhD programs, and our industrial partners or any other non-academic partners actually don't care whether our two-level relational type theory is going to bring the information processing model closer to the way humans use it and away from what is being implemented now in the operational systems. They don't want to know. I mean, you glazed, you know, so what? But our reality is that we are forced not to care about dissemination and communication because we've got to earn our living. We've got to make careers and so on. So that is the gap between what output our universities, our communities expect from us, and what output the research partners expect from us. And very often if you're working as an academic on large projects like this, you're doing two jobs, because you've got to maintain your relationship with your partners. You've got to be relevant to whatever we've promised to deliver. But at the same time, your deans and your heads of department say, where's your, you've got to get, we are going to be evaluated for research excellence, and you've got all these millions and hundreds of thousands of pounds, and you've got only 2 papers, and somebody who hasn't done it has got 5 papers. You see what I mean? So that's the reality where, and that gap has to be bridged if we are going to have impact pathways coherent, consistent, and sustainable. So it's a very important issue to consider. Whether or not we have a 1 answer or 10 answers possibly will depend on the nature of the application domain. For example, I started my very first European project was revolutionizing construction industry. And we went to construction teams that were used to, they were used to working together, only without the technology. So in a sense, we were bringing in technology to already formed human community, business community, with business models and all their priorities. And all we needed to do is make sure that just as they respect the priority, large construction companies respect the priorities of the SMEs, that they will respect the priorities of university staff. So once we've got that respect, then we could allow time and flexibility for everybody to realize their own aims, which may not have been completely aligned with the aims of the project or with the aims of the entire team. And I think that works. So when we're looking for synergies, we're looking for that. Now, whether that can be actually expressed in how many pages are we allowed to do?
45.
45, oh my God, yes. A few years ago, there were 65. So we could actually play with words a little bit more. Whether we can do that in a proposal is something that we as evaluators have to get a uniform perspective on, so that we are fair to all proposals, to proposers. So yeah, I mean, that question actually raised quite a significant issues for a partnership model. How do we partner being so different and having such different pressures on each type of partner?
To your earlier point about this moving up and down the abstraction layers, let's say,
Yeah.
of our work, I remember the days when the European Commission decided to introduce security as a vertical. So first we had, for 2 years, 2005-2006, we had the preparatory activity for security research with some small pilot projects just to test the waters. And then we had a full-blown funding instrument in FP7 with a tiny budget, but it was there. So it was a vertical. I was having the time of my life with that call. I was submitting proposals, I was winning a lot with my teams and my partners and everything. There was, reflecting on your question, I think there was one single reason. Before launching that call, the European Commission issued a type of white paper why we're introducing security research. And it was, like you said, I think maybe 100 pages, maybe 90, maybe whatever. And it was saying, point by point, why we're starting this team and what topics we're going to focus on. Not 4.3.3, not that level of topic detail, but we're going to do work for public spaces. Why? Because we see threats with terrorism, we see accidents, we see this, we see that. And there was a justification behind that. So I learned that by heart. And that helped me a lot increase my empathy towards what the funder, the European Commission, is looking for. And I think that in the last few years, we are missing that link. So in simple terms, very simple information saying, why is the Commission investing time, effort, money, whatever we want to call it, in the specific domains, and how do these translate into the little topics that we see every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever. I think that would be a very helpful tool to be there. And ideally, in 2024, this should be done somehow digitally, to be online, some sort of a toolbox, like linking strategy to implementation, which is going to be nice, transparent, usable for every one of us, but also providing a little bit of an accountability link to all the other non-participants who hear that there's a lot of activity going on there, but do not really understand why all this buzz, all this fuss, and what's in it for them. So something like that, I think, would help. I think it's a fair point.
Can I just add just one comment to this? When you're writing a proposal, a very important question is, why would anybody want to give me money for what I'm trying to do? And many people don't do that. And when I've learned that lesson through sort of several failed proposals, I became successful. So, and that is actually bringing it down to the personal, individual level, what Dimitris has just explained.
And I know that's you said it amazingly well. So, and I know we're not comparing apples to apples when I say what I'm about to say, but it used to be a big shock when moving from the free text of FP7 to the limit of Horizon 2020, then to the Horizon Europe limit and stuff like that. At the same time, we need to consider that as a business owner, when an investor approaches me, they only ask for 12 pages. And actually, it's a PowerPoint, not even a page. It's just like maximum 200 words in the entire presentation. And I have to be so good and thorough in those 12 slides, 14 if I'm lucky, that I have to convince them that my business is valued at, if I say 8 million, then it's 8 million, and it's not 5 or it's not 15. So the thing is that we need to make sure that the whole concept, from strategy all the way down to the little topics, to the little projects each and every one of us does every day, everything falls into alignment. Otherwise, and that gives rise to the synergy, to this magic word. Otherwise, you don't have tandem. And because we also mentioned, you touched upon another sensitive subject earlier on about academia versus industry and SMEs, striking the tandem, the equilibrium there between these different types of partners is an art, right? Because academia needs time to do fundamental research, you know, to prepare the new things and so on and so forth. And at the same time, you have SMEs that need to run at the speed of light in order to remain competitive. And at the same time, you have industries who have major operations in place. They look for innovation in order to bring it in, but they will not move as fast as a startup or as an SME. So you have 3 different organizations, 3 different stakeholders, 3 different whys, and 3 different speeds. So all that contributing to the 9 impact pillars that we do in Horizon Europe. So this needs to be skillful, and it's not just patching up texts or, you know, what I've seen very often, and I have a laugh every time I see that, is within the impact section when people say, oh, 10,000 followers on our Twitter page or handle should be good enough. Why? Why is that good enough for your project and not for the next one? Or why is that the only metric you need to focus on? There is no justification. If there was a justification saying, I need 1,000 Twitter followers, let's say, for example, because my business model relies on X, Y, Z, or my adoption model is going to be X, Y, Z, then okay, yeah, 5 out of 5. But just putting a number there, just to say, yeah, did you put the Twitter followers? Yes, I did. Oh, good, good. Oh, we're ready to submit now.
Can I add on what was said? And following up on what Fabian was saying, is first, I think nobody should call the Commission a funder. It should be called an investor.
Yes.
Because an investor wants something back, some results. And the investment is to make Europe better in terms of competitiveness for industry, in terms of livability for citizens, etc. But then the problem that Fabian was touching on is you need to know the introduction of the work program. Okay, I can read that. You need to know the introduction of the destination. I can read that as well. You need to know the white paper, the communication, the decision, the act, the green paper, the blue paper, the purple paper, in order to be better than the other project. for that, you need probably, if you are working in SME, you have your daily business to do. You need a professional advisor. That professional advisor might take for the proposal phase 20K, 30K, 40K. You need perfect graphics to show your impact. Is this the direction we should go in the future? And you all need to do that in 45 pages, lump sums 50 pages, lump sums. Another thing, what are lump sums? How do I do that? How do I prove the impact there? So yeah, I am with Fabian. We are making it more and more complex. So we are reducing the number of people that can play this game to the ones that already are playing it and knowing it.
Hi, my name is Maria Purnari. I come from Greece as well. I work for Joist Innovation Park and the Institute of Entrepreneurship Development. So what we do is actually dissemination, communication, and exploitation. We do not get paid for this. We participate as partners in the projects. So there is a designers department. There is practically we undertake all the branding of each project. So no one has to pay us 20 or 10K or 5K for us to participate in that. And we actually do take time not to read throughout all the colored papers, but we do read the majority of them, so we kind of have an idea what the impact is about. We actually also write the impact ourselves so that we don't have this patching that you mentioned that comes after many people write. And also we take it from the researchers that they usually hate to write impact or hate to give the KPIs and numbers and all that. So I think there is a way, and we're quite good at it. I'm happy to have heard what you just mentioned because we kind of follow it. And also what has worked for us is to have some either meetings or ask for the partners to give us what they need so we get to align it, because it's always better when you have one partner aligning everything so as to give a coherent result. Just a quick reply to what the gentleman just said.
Okay, it's getting heating up here in the room. It's good. Yeah, reflecting on this, I'm just picking up because you mentioned the importance of synergies and partnering up with the right people and having a partner. You are a partner in a consortium doing this impact and part of the application. You mentioned also the innovation part. And that would be my next question, is to ask you, what is innovation? What is the definition of innovation?
Do we have the rest of the day to talk about that?
Yeah.
We're not leaving early today, it's okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a huge topic.
Yeah.
My plane home is tomorrow morning, so we've got all the time.
Okay, good.
Very good.
Now, for me, the definition as a scientist, I can say, the definition is facing challenges, old challenges, in a new way. But that's kind of easier said than done, right? And one of the things that would make that that definition stick would be to look at the influence of whatever changes, whatever challenges we have, whatever solutions we have for addressing those challenges from a personal and individual point of view. And impacts as they are now defined with sort of broadly economic, societal, and what's that last one? Business, organizational. Don't actually touch upon the motivations of individual, personal people. And I think I will just give you an example. when we started introducing remote devices so that people could work remotely, that was one of the frameworks 6 or 7. The organization said, great, we're not going to have to pay them to travel. The climate environmentalists said, great, we're going to save on that. But we found, after about 6 months, following experts who were managers dealing with multinational companies, that they have not only used up all the remote resources and frequencies and everything to communicate with, for example, their branch in Thailand, but they also increased their travel to Thailand. So the impact of that was not as expected. And I think many of the impacts that are significant are not expected. We sort of interviewed them and tried to find out why. And they said, because we could do our jobs better. They were not so much concerned with saving the money on travel or saving even time on travel, but to do the job that they're given to do in the way that they, as professionals, individually felt was the right thing to do. And they appropriated the new technological devices in order to find new ways of doing their jobs better. So their priorities were different. And I think it's an important consideration to actually say how people are going to behave actually when we give them all those resources that we've provided for them, technology and so on. Because there are some changes need to be sort of made in our mindset as well. What counts as a good impact or positive impact or not a negative impact.
Yeah, so Bakar from MNCP from Norway. Just a reflection on the discussions which have already been done, but a question as well. So if you look at the intervention logic in the Horizon Europe, so we have the strategic plan, or even before we have this specific plan, then in intervention areas, strategic plan with orientations or strategic orientations, destinations, topic. So there is a lot of things an applicant has to take into account when writing an application. But you are sitting with evaluation processes, so you see to what extent those things have been taken into account and to what extent they are relevant or not when you write an application. So any suggestion or anything we can do that we can improve in the future planning, maybe things which are really redundant in this whole thinking process, that are, even if the good projects which get funded, they really do not take those into account, or things which even good applications, they fail because they have not really looked into all those things. So how we can really improve this whole intervention logic in the future?
I don't think there's a silver bullet to this, honestly, because this, the outcome of the application evaluation is also a combination of factors that are outside, let's say, most of the times, the control of the European Commission, meaning that there are consortia, there are teams who do not come to these events ever, okay, consistently, and they still submit proposals, which means that you have applicants that could be in a good disconnect, in a fair amount of disconnect with the reality of how things are shaping up. Why this has happened, maybe there are different reasons for that. However, the only way to ensure that people remain constantly aware of these things is to keep repeating and to make it simple, meaning the following, that they say that good brains can withhold 7 rules or 7 pieces of information at any point in time regarding a subject. Average brains can hold 5. Normal brains can hold 3. So the simpler we keep it for them to remember things and to align to things, the simpler it's going to be at the end of the day. I'm more of a fan of a 3 because my brain capacity has been declining over the years, but that's a different discussion. Yeah. So I think the best thing we can do is keep repeating on one side and keeping it as simple as possible for people to be constantly aware of why this thing is being requested in that particular topic or in that particular challenge or cluster or whatever it might be. When it comes now to your easy question of on innovation, I don't know. I think innovation is whatever adds new value to life and to business. This is innovation. I think it can be a device, it can be a piece of software, it can be a process, it can be whatever we can imagine. And just to give the simplest possible example of innovation, innovation is what we called it novelty earlier, what the Commission introduced with the 9 strategic pillars. So this is something that did not exist previously. It adds value to the consortia because it gives them a guideline on what to do, what they need to check on and stuff like that. And at the same time, it returns a lot of value to the Commission, hopefully, in the sense that the Commission is going to be able to invest in projects that have a higher probability of delivering successfully the impact they're promising because they know what they need to do. So this is a very simple example of innovation. It doesn't have to be a new rocket or a new car or something else. It just needs to be something new that delivers new value to our daily lives or to any commercial activity or research activity that we're doing.
Yeah, I could give you an example. Oh, sorry. I could give you an example from my original field, theoretical linguistics. You've probably heard. I mean, we started as descriptive social scientists, we started describing grammars, vocabularies of disappearing languages, particularly American Indian languages. And then Chomsky, Noam Chomsky came along and he said, well, no, we shouldn't be focusing on that. We should actually try to explain how humans use language and develop a mathematical model that will generate the same, with the same input, mathematical model, output that would be similar to the way that comes out of human mind. He failed. He failed badly because there is no way a mathematical model can do anything close to what human mind does. But in the process of proving whether or not we can have a mathematical model of human language processing, he generated several types of grammars that are mathematically sound and have become the basis for operating systems, and that's why we've got the technology, and not just AI, but all sort of work on the computer languages. We also have new disciplines like psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics that have taken up his hypothesis. So innovation is not in what he did and what he said, because he made a mistake, big whopping mistake, but in the impact that his mistake had on what people have been doing ever since. So that's an innovation. But there are lots of changes happened to our lives, not just scientists, businesses and technologists and so on, that made it possible for us to talk about impacts in that sense as well. So innovation is making a mistake can lead to significant innovation. We should not be afraid of making a mistake. And who cares whether he was right about the mathematical models of language processing? Look at the benefits that we are now enjoying from it. And that, I think, something that I, as an evaluator, I keep looking for in the proposals. But as an evaluator, an honest, well-meaning evaluator, I don't know how seriously I can either punish it or reward it. And that maybe is the question that we need to we need to revisit all these things so that we can be fair to the proposals when we evaluate them.
Yeah, thank you.
Stolen your microphone for about 10 minutes. Sorry. No, I was triggered by the. So first of all, I'm Shane O'Shasnon from the TU in Eindhoven, and I was triggered by the first part of the discussion, which was about alignment, and then we have, let's say, innovation and novelty. And I was wondering, are you wiser when you're putting a proposal together to align and to look to follow the message that's coming from the European Commission, or are you better off in the proposal to try and bring in a creative, novel idea? And to give an example, I was thinking of this story where Steve Jobs, the American, took a course in calligraphy. And using that background of having a random course, which he took by chance apparently, he created one of the first Apple computers with fonts. So that was taking something from left field and using it. And I wonder, would that get past the European Commission? Because it's a kind of a tricky one. We're going to create something we don't know if it's there yet, and we're bringing people in from other backgrounds. Is that a good idea or a bad idea in a proposal to bring those things in?
If we are talking statistics, because at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? So you give it a go and you see whether this went okay or not. This is one of the foundational issues we need to resolve when evaluating proposals, and this is not just for the evaluators, but this needs to come from the guideline level, let's say, down, simply because the European Commission gives us the framework. So they're saying, this is the playing field, guys. This is what I'm looking for. You need to play within these 4 sides. So it's like football, right? Nobody's going to mandate to you whether you should go for a 4-3-3 or a 4-3-2-1, or you can use whatever system you want. If you can think of not using a goalkeeper, for example, and using them to be an attack midfielder, for example, nobody's going to penalize you for that, right? As long as you still have 11 players playing the game and they're staying within the stadium limits. Within the European Commission, I don't think this is always the case, simply because it's unclear what are the expectations in specific topics. And I've had a recent example with Wellix, where we were invited to offer our solution. What we do in a nutshell is employee well-being, technology and science. So we develop different modules that come in the form of a software as a service that help employees take care of their well-being and organizations to perform better in the longer term. So the reality is that currently the biggest concern when it comes to companies, organizations, and well-being is mental health. It's a global emerging pandemic, unfortunately. So we thought that when we were approaching this topic of the European Commission about 1.5 years ago, or maybe more, I don't remember exactly the timings, that there should be something taking care of that. We failed miserably. We scored probably 8 out of 15. So we were in complete misalignment, because what the Commission was expecting, and that was nowhere to be described, was better furniture, ventilation, so very basic things. Whereas at the moment, you know, the whole well-being movement has moved past furniture and ventilation, because this was a thing of the past, and has moved into more sensitive things. So when we were proposing voice analytics, which it's part of our product these days, we have actually developed that you can speak to it for 15 seconds, and 15 seconds later you get a response on how you feel, if you are stressed, if you're fatigued, or whatever. They said, no, we don't want that. We want something, you know, a lot simpler. So, exactly. So I think a key aspect to that is, we touched upon it a bit earlier, I think from your point, that we need to bring the proposers closer to the source of information, because the source of information is not always what is just presented in the call text. We need to have somehow the capability of people to interact with the decision makers, with the policy makers, and understand what is the underlying principle. Why is it phrased the way it's phrased? And that would help a lot with having this sort of alignment, as we said earlier on, with what I perceive they request and what they actually request. Because otherwise...
It shouldn't actually be guesswork, if you see what I mean. I don't care what, I want the money, and I'll do what I want to do once I get the money, but in order to get the money, I've got to play the game, as it were. And that, I think, is possibly not the best way of approaching it. And Idealist is, as an organization, as a team, can actually play a significant role in clarifying the issues and actually making sure that the proposers know what is expected of them rather than guess what is by mentioning buzzwords. As we say, you spend your time writing a proposal, bringing the consortium together, working out how you're choosing methodologies and so on, and then you translate it into what we called a buzzword compliant version. And that, I think, is possibly not the best way of doing it. But how we can find a better way is another issue that we need to address. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as an evaluator, I feel conflicted. If I see in my area where I'm confident that I can recognize significant issues, and I find something that arises from the proposal but it isn't mentioned very clearly in the text, what do I do? Do I say, well, no, it's not in the text and therefore you lose points, or yes, this is an important thing to research and therefore you gain points? What's my legitimate authority in here? I think that's a personal perspective, it can be, so you lose a bit of sleep over that. That's an impact.
Having heard a lot about like criticism now on the framework program and how it works, and also having myself still some criticism, we also have to recall that we've already gone a far way. In the 7th framework program, long time ago, you had to be able to, or you needed to read between the lines of the topic text, and you had to get in touch with the project officer, program officer that was responsible for the call, or with the NCPs, to get somehow the feeling what do they really want. And nowadays, the caveat is if you are able to read the text in the way the Commission wrote it, that's the problem. It's as it is. The text that's there, at least in cluster 4, is what the Commission wants. They have really made an effort to make it better. Also, the member states don't interfere as much with the text itself anymore as in the past. And that's a good thing. The problem still is you need a translator. You need a deepl.com from EU-ish to English. Because what's written in the text is not necessarily what I from a university or my colleague from an SME understands. So it's different languages in reality, and that's something where the NCPs step in and still have to step in. Maybe we find a way to do it better in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it comes down to interpretation. With like every text in a book, you interpret it differently, and then you're lucky or unlucky when you're applying for a grant. I really wanted to touch up on some practical things, because we are getting to the end and the air is ending as well here inside. I wanted to discuss, there is often a confusion between the impact indicators and key performance indicators. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and how they differ?
I start very quickly. I don't do key performance indicators, but that's my background and my role in the projects and my subject. So I can see that it lights the candle for some people, but not for me. Impact indicators are different, the way I would define them. because they are to do not with the quantities, not with the sort of statistics of the output has to be awareness rather than statistics or data. Now, I know that in many areas this is not enough, but possibly the key performance indicators should be a form of that result that derives from awareness of what the impact indicators are. So I would look for the relationship between those two concepts. Yeah.
Just to add to it, because it complements what you said earlier about why am I having the LinkedIn page with 10,000 followers? Because. So it complements that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, the 10,000 followers is not important, but the reasons why they visited it would probably teach us more and make us more aware and make us more direct our research, our efforts more towards what the Commission wants, regardless of what the context. Context is a different way, it's an expression, but the aims are the same. So once we understand the aims, then we can actually increase our awareness, increase our knowledge, and that includes what I said before, the courage to be wrong. And at the moment, as I said, I would not advise you to be too brave if you want to get funding.
But I mean, everything needs to be presented in somehow a continuum, right? So we start with a need, we move into requirements, to design, to research, to all the activities, and then at the end of the day, we build something, whatever that might be, that performs in a specific way. So this automatically falls under the category of key performance indicators. So we build a new phone, okay, key performance indicator is how many pieces of information it can process in a nanosecond, or how much battery it can store for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or whatever. But the important thing here is that this needs to translate into value. So because it can last for 14 hours, it means I can be more mobile and I can be more flexible at my work. So this is a type of value that the longer battery life might deliver to the user. Okay, so why did I create that value versus another type of value? Because it was mandated by the user that my biggest problem at the moment is that I keep moving all day long and I need to have this operational 24/7. So the battery is the problem, or the battery is the key challenge I need to address. In Wellix, we do something similar because we try to convince human resource departments that it's very important to invest in their employees' well-being. And then you get a very cynical response from the head of procurement or the CEO of the company saying, oh, how much is that going to cost? Okay? And yeah, and we go back and we say, well, what do you mean? They say, oh, blah, 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 blah. What is the subscription model? What is this? What is that? So we give them a figure and we say it's 50K a year or whatever. And then you see them reacting and say, oh, that might be a lot. Oh, that might be cheap. And then when you run them through, we actually managed to create 3 months ago a value calculator, value on investment we call it, not a return on investment, which is how many less sick leave days on average you're going to get from your people. What is going to do for your employer branding, so you become more attractive as a company, as an organization, for people to come to work to. Your people are going to be happier, and this is going to reflect on your employer net promoter scores and surveys. Your customers are going to be happier simply because they're going to be treated better by your employees, by your project managers, by your whatever people you have in there. So this is value that, when you talk about value, the problem is that for many people it becomes something nebulous, something intangible. At the end of the day, if we really think about it, value, again, boils down to specific metrics being radically improved. And this is what we need to understand, that KPI is a more rigid number concerning performance of specific elements. Value is something more aspirational, but still it needs to be measured. somehow, so that it is convincing and it makes sense.
But then KPI is part of the PII, the impact indicators. Basically, they lead to it.
Exactly.
Criteria result in justified, motivated KPIs, and not KPIs that we can express quantitatively. So I think there is a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have time, but in our symbolic logic community, we have a joke about there is a lamppost and there is a man going around the lamppost looking at the ground. So what are you looking for? My car keys. Oh, this is where you lost them. No, I lost them around the corner, but it's darker there. We've got to avoid that kind of a mindset. But yeah, KPIs are important, but they have to be derived from understanding and from impact. I would say that what the impact pathway should lead to, one of the things that it should lead to, a concrete successes of areas.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we take just last comments. So any final key message, sentence from you two? And of course, if you have any comments here also.
I think this is a very exciting time to be in this field. Almost as exciting as when we started with the AI. And I think what at that time we had a metaphor of AI is an extension of human mind with all the language and cognition and so on, in a similar way that a hammer is an extension of a human hand. But then you start thinking about, well, why is a hammer effective? Because if you try to bang a nail with this, it's soft and it's not the right size and so on. It's not the right material, so that's it. But what gives it a real strength is the handle. And if the human hand can clasp the handle, then you can bang that nail in really powerfully. And that is what we're looking for in AI. We're not looking for a mimic, for a model of a human mind. We're looking for the alignment of the human mind with the AI tools that we are developing. And that's sort of essentially the concept of impact.
Excellent. Thank you.
On my end, the last remark would be to, first of all, make sure everyone is aligned on the team when you start whatever activity, and constantly keep challenging why you put anything in the proposal and subsequently anything into a project. And the best way to question that is to constantly go up and down the abstraction levels, because that will make sure that you are always up to date, and whatever decision you're making has a higher chance of making it at the end of the day and being successful. Don't be afraid to, not to fail, but to try things that will not work. It's part of the process, it's inevitable. I mean, in order to, pardon?
It's research.
At the end of the day, it's research, very well said.
Problem-solving as well.
Yeah, yeah, and not all problems can be solved by all teams, right? You need the right specialization, you need the right mindset, you need the right focus, you need the right time. Try to remain creative. Do not try to just satisfy the template or the checklist. Be creative, that's very, very important. And this is important not just because it's gonna make our job as an evaluator more interesting, but also it's gonna help bring value, a lot more value back into the next framework program, and to make it even better or faster or wealthier and so on and so forth. That's it.
Okay, then it's a wrap up. I thank you all for coming. I thank you two very much for joining us and answering all these questions. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day.